to the Hagen-Renaker channel. Today, we're going to learn about mold making from scratch without a blocking case that would normally be used to make production molds. Making a production mold from scratch without an established blocking case master requires a mix of science and art. A complete figurine will be pulled out of this rigid matrix that slides apart like a strangely industrial puzzle box. When I first started mold making, U.S. Gypsum was kind enough to answer my questions, and they sent me a plaster mixing slide rule calculator. Slide rules are super cool. The mixing ratio is 7 parts water to 10 parts plaster. I make smallish molds, so I measure both by weight in grams. You will need a digital scale, clean flexible buckets only used for mold making, and a fresh bag, 50 pounds, of U.S. Gypsum Pottery Plaster No. 1, and clean water. Plastilube soap is the best. Several of the new designs to the Hagen-Renaker Tennessee line are 3D prints. First, I have to buff off the contact points left by the scaffolding in the 3D print process. Next, I draw parting lines on the model to capture all the details within a single horizon line. I turn the model around and around until I have completed each of its horizons. The lines drawn on the model guide my claying up decisions. I am sculpting the angles of draw in wet clay. To prepare for a plaster pour, walls are built around the clayed up master. In this case, I made quick cardboard walls secured with hot glue. Next, I sealed the edges to the walls with soft, wet clay. The mold release for pottery mold making is called Plastilube. It is applied foamy with a sponge and then spread and dried with compressed air. This is Plastilube mold soap, a must for any plaster mold maker. A little dab will do ya, because even half a teaspoon is enough to soap half of a mold. So how do I know how much plaster to mix for this piece that I've never molded before? It's a reduction in size of the Hagen-Renaker Daisy. It's not on the original mold blocking case. I had to make a mold from scratch with wet clay. So how do I know? I keep a very careful record of what my production mold plaster weight required, both plaster weight and water weight, and the plaster weight of the mass that would make up about this amount. I know how much this is. In my notebook, this was 1,500 grams. So I'm going to add an extra 500 grams for good measure, and that's what I'm going with, a 2,000 gram pour. We're a respirator for measuring and adding the dry plaster. I like to indulge in fun buckets with dinosaurs on them. After the dry is added to the water, we allow the plaster to slake so that it fully hydrates, promoting a good homogeneous blend. This can take minutes, depending upon the ambient temperature, the temperature of your water, and how much plaster you have added. The more plaster, the greater the exotherm, the faster it sets up, so you need a shorter slaking period. Now that the plaster has slaked, I mix it to a creamy texture, tap up the air bubbles, pour those off, and then fill the mold. After the plaster hardens, I wire cut the piece off the board. The 2 ear pieces are very small, and to mix plaster for just one is wasteful. I mixed enough for both pieces to pour at the same time. I tap each mold after pouring to release any air bubbles that stuck to the ears. The bubbles rise to the top, which has an extra reservoir that I will later carve off. As each piece hardens, the clay is peeled off, the plaster is cleaned, and then it is soaped for the next pour. Some inner pieces require plaster flicking or splashing on the surfaces, followed by the rest of the pour. Sometimes I make mistakes and carve below the parting line. I had to mix a patch of plaster and fill up to meet the line on this foreleg. Next, I'll carve this smooth, soap it, and pour the next piece. It will look and work like nothing happened. Nearly every surface will be carved and smoothed by hand, a tedious enterprise time-lapsed here. One can use dental tools or minarets for this task. This time-lapse covers about 38 minutes of work. Some molds come off the original master much easier than others. Using a mold knife, compressed air, and a wedge tapped with a mallet, I very patiently wiggle the bisque master out of the rigid plaster. This requires hand strength, stamina, and a large dose of patience. If I rush, I will break the narrow edges on the parting lines, which widens the seams on the castings and makes much more work for myself later. This mold had more segments and was stubborn. This time-lapse was an hour of solid work. Some chipping occurred and was repaired by saving the chips and gluing them back with cyanoacrylate glue. This will not harm later castings. The 3D print flexed and emerged unbroken. Now that you've seen how this style of mold making is achieved, it may give you an appreciation of how much care and labor go into each Hagen-Renaker and why they cost what they do. It's not just the glazing on the finished piece, but all of the planning, patience, and skill sets that start from the original. This art form of mold making and slip casting dates back to ancient Egypt, and as a traditional art form, it is facing extinction today. I hope this overview inspires others to carry it forward. There is so much potential to continue the pottery tradition. Don't be discouraged if you fail your first few molds. Apply your learned mistakes, and you'll get there. This can be taught to others without even speaking the same language, as it is learned both visually and by feel. Thank you for coming along on this mold-making journey. You may join the Hagen-Renaker Collectors Club for information on these editions.